Welcome everyone to this meeting of Research about Learning in Higher Education Research Centre. I'm Louise Taylor, I'm the director of the centre, and I'm really delighted to welcome Isabel Virgo to talk to us today about AI tools for research. Now, Isabel is an open research librarian at Oxford Brookes University, and her team support researchers with open access publishing, source discovery, and a range of other open research practices. And Isabel's also in the 5th year of her part-time PhD, looking at the information behaviour of disadvantaged students, using a variety of traditional and AI-based discovery tools in her own research. So thank you so much for coming to talk to us. And I'll hand over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Louise. Welcome, everybody. So because I'm from a library perspective, that's where I'm coming from. There's going to be a specific focus in this presentation on the use of AI tools for literature review. But we will start by covering broader uses of AI across the research lifecycle. So I'll begin with that and a little sort of peek at the future as well around agentic AI. And then I'll move on to a little bit more detail about using AI for literature review processes, highlight a few specific tools that we're currently suggesting for students at all levels and for staff researchers. And another thing I'm just going to cover towards the end is journal policies around use of AI in research, because I think that's quite an important thing to be aware of if you're planning to publish. So let's start with a quick look about the kind of things that AI can be used for in the research life cycle. So I think the first thing that a lot of people make use of AI for at the beginning of their projects is in the planning stages. I've found it quite useful, and I mean, this is just sort of basic chatbots like Copilot, ChatGPT, Gemini, for suggesting things that I might have missed. I think alternative methodologies, alternative theoretical frameworks, things like that I might not have thought of. So in the planning stages, I made use of it for that in my own project. And I'd recommend that others do the same. So not getting it to plan out your entire project for you, but pointing out gaps where there might be literature that you're not aware of, and pockets of practice that you're not aware of. If you are doing qualitative data collection, and I am more on the qualitative side than the quantitative side by quite a long way. So that's my area around understanding. There's a lot that you can do quantitatively with different AI applications. But with qualitative data collection, I think useful features could be the ability to test pilot questions. So if you're doing interviews, surveys, etc., to get feedback from AI tools, a little bit in the same way as we encourage students to use it as a study buddy. It's kind of saying, okay, here's my suggested set of questions. What do you think? Can you point out any gaps? How might this come across to different groups of people, etc. It's not a replacement for a human pilot, but I found that a good use for it. Suggesting follow-up probes for interviews. So starting with basic questions and then asking it to suggest how you might probe further into participants' responses. I think that could be helpful for kind of developing your thinking and again making sure that you're not missing opportunities to probe deeper into your data and sort of surfacing any implicit assumptions that you might be making in your research design and your data collection design. I'm often asked if it can be used for data analysis, and my general responses with caution, and always excluding any sensitive and identifiable data. Now, there are options to run models locally. This is not something that I've done myself, but it's something that I think members of staff here and probably at other institutions are exploring. And there are a few that are specifically aimed at research. So there's different models that you can download locally to run on your computer, with then those safeguards of the data staying locally. So I think one I heard of was Hermes 3 and Dolphin Phi. Are a couple of models that have been recommended to me specifically for research uses. As I say, I haven't tried those myself. But there's a methodological point here as well. I think there's been a debate recently, particularly authors like Virginia Brown, who was behind reflexive thematic analysis, coming out quite strongly against the use of AI in those kinds of processes, because it takes the researcher out of the equation to too high a degree. It doesn't enable you to engage deeply with your data if you're using AI to do things like generate themes. So I think there's quite a strong case to be made that it shouldn't really be used for things like that. But if you're doing some more structured kind of content analysis, then it could well be useful. But again, that real caution about anything that might be considered sensitive, because when you're uploading to a free AI tool without any institutional or localized protections, you are just basically uploading it to the cloud. Different companies have different privacy policies. Some are much more trustworthy than others, but I'd approach all of them with a lot of caution. As part of the writing process, I think this is something that we're very familiar with students doing, and that researchers might want to engage with these features as well. I'd say the same really as I would to a student, which is just about ensuring that you retain authorship, which is a little bit of a slippery concept, I think, when it comes to AI. But I sometimes use it for tweaks. I think particularly abstracts, things like that, trying to get something really pinpoint, concise, it can be really useful for. But people will have different views on the extent to which it's legitimate to use AI in the writing process. And then I think around dissemination, things like data visualization, there's a lot of tools like Adobe Firefly that can be useful for presenting your data in different ways, maybe translation, maybe suggesting channels for dissemination as well. So I think those are all uses that can be considered. We are hearing a lot more now about agentic AI. So that's defined as artificial intelligence systems capable of autonomous operation with minimal human oversight. So this is the creation of agents that do tasks for you, that you kind of set up and set them running. For me at the moment, this is more of a kind of it's in the near horizon rather than something that I'm using now. But I read an interesting report by the Research Data Alliance and Microsoft recently, where they asked researchers about their priorities for new agentic AI tools. And the top one, which might put me out of a job, we'll see, was the literature librarian, which would go away and search literature using natural language search queries, integrate with the library subscriptions. We are increasingly seeing that. We're seeing the traditional library databases jumping on board with AI, integrating AI into their products. It's all a little bit siloed at the moment. but I think we'll see more in this direction, and also integrations with learning management systems. The data director, so designed to support research data preparation and sharing in compliance with the FAIR principles. People were interested to see something that could help with that. And then finally, the funding finder. So those were the top 3 priorities that researchers identified. And I think most researchers can recognise those as kind of pain points in the research process, where people would welcome some of the busy work taken away perhaps by AI, but it's always about kind of keeping that balance of keeping control of your research project whilst using AI maybe to help alleviate some of those pain points. So I'm going to focus in now on using AI for lit review. A quick word about AI tools versus traditional databases and search engines like Google Scholar. I'd always say they're a helpful addition to your institutional databases and to other sources that you might be searching, rather than being a complete replacement at the moment. Even if you find something within an AI tool, you'll often have to rely on an institutional subscription to access the full text of the article. There is obviously an increasing movement towards open access versions becoming available. And so a lot of these tools are surfacing open access versions of papers as well, which has its benefits and disadvantages, I think, because a lot of them are searching quite a broad corpus of content that could be peer reviewed or not. Could be that you're seeing an open access version that might have far fewer citations listed than the fully published version, for example. So sometimes you need to do a bit of unpicking there. But in general, as an open research librarian, very in favour of the move towards open access, and that has helped to underpin many of these tools. They are, as I was just saying, specialised tools built on collections of academic work. So the tools that I'm talking about here are essentially large language models that have been plonked on top of a collection of academic sources. So as opposed to something like ChatGPT, which I think most of us know is quite well known for hallucinating references, it's getting better, but it still does an awful lot of that. With the tools that I'm going to be highlighting, it takes away some of the hallucination risk because it is always directly linking to specific sources that are real, they do exist, and you can follow the chain of references to find them. I think one of the advantages of these AI tools, they search in a different way to traditional databases. And so by using both methods, you're likely to uncover different sets of sources. That's part of the reason why we recommend doing both. So with traditional databases, it's going to be broadly keyword searching. So you're having to distill your research question into a collection of keywords. Choosing appropriate keywords can be quite tricky. So I find AI tools particularly useful for questions that are difficult to express with classic keyword combinations. I think an example of this from my recent career as a business librarian, we had an assignment and it was about cooperative versus competitive strategies for startups. And if you think about words like cooperative, competitive, they've got very broad meanings. So it can be really difficult to surface the literature that you're actually looking for there with a keyword search. I found when I turned to an AI tool using natural language searching, it was able to interpret the context around that question much more than I was able to express it in a combination of keywords. So I think for those kind of tasks, it can be really, really useful. So that kind of question and answer format is common to quite a lot of these tools. Put in your research question, get a selection of sources, or in some cases, a more developed research report that goes some way towards answering part of your question. There's also the capability to upload documents to these tools. That could be other published work. I should have a little word about copyright here because a lot of journals are not entirely happy about their copyrighted content being uploaded to AI tools. You would be safer with open access content or indeed your own work. So sometimes I might do something like if I've written some introductory paragraphs, an abstract or something for a piece of work that I'm producing, upload that into an AI tool to then get suggestions for references that I might want to follow up on. It can help to highlight citations in their context, which is really useful because pure numbers of citations don't often tell you exactly what you want to know about how a work has been cited. So the real classic example is the Andrew Wakefield discredited study about the link between vaccinations and autism has loads of citations. It's got thousands of citations, but that's mostly people debunking that work. So you can look at those pure numbers of citations, go, this is a highly cited article, brilliant. But if you actually want to dig into that, some of these tools provide useful features for doing that.
That's what you're doing now.
And there are tools that present visual maps of connections between sources. So again, that's all based on underlying networks of citations. Research Rabbit is a really good tool for that. It does depend, that one, on building up a collection of articles. And then it will start to create more and more detailed maps that will allow you to explore by topic, by author, across time, and it'll do these wonderful kind of networked graphs that show you how all these sources relate to each other. So you can start off with a few papers that you found already, and then use that to expand outwards. And then there are some that offer either text or audio or video summaries of sources. Classic example of that is Notebook LM. So that does audio summaries, which are basically podcasts between two AI hosts who will discuss the content of one or more uploaded documents or linked web pages. And that can be absolutely fascinating, especially if you're willing to upload some of your own published work into there and see what they say about it. It's astonishingly realistic. They do things like interrupt each other, and it really does feel like listening to a podcast. And one of the features that they've brought in the last year or so is that you can interrupt them as well. So you can just tap a button, speak aloud, ask them to focus in on a particular aspect, and that is really fascinating. I think Notebook LM is a really clever tool. The video summaries are a bit less developed at this stage, I think. They're a little bit like those kind of I'm trying to think of the tool now, but it's those kind of graphics videos that generate kind of cartoony style summaries, a sort of presentation of the content. And then a lot of them will give text summaries. So a lot of these tools will summarize a source very briefly in a paragraph or so. So we have a library guide that Mary kindly mentioned here at Oxford Brookes, but this is available for everyone to browse. It covers, it's aimed at everybody, basically. It's aimed at all students at all levels who might be doing some kind of research project or literature review. So it reinforces our messages about academic integrity to start with. Responsible uses of AI, points students to our institutional guidance, and then moves on to talking about how these tools can help with research, which is essentially what I've covered already. It has some key issues to consider. So I'm just going to move over now to that page, and I'll show you what some of those key issues might be. I'm not sure we're going to have time for demos because I just chat on and on about this stuff. But I'll very briefly just point you to these. So we're looking at things like accuracy and bias, which sources are included and excluded, which voices might be included and excluded. I think with the general publishing landscape, there's already bias baked into that. There are certain areas of the world that have fewer opportunities to publish. And so what's published in the first place is skewed. And then AI models and their training data can bring in another source of bias. So that is always something to be well aware of. And then things like whether the sources are considered to be of good quality, and a word about things like data protection and copyright. And the thorny question of citation, which I won't go into in detail here, except to say that we've come to the conclusion at Brookes that it's not really about citation because AI is not an author, doesn't have the ability to take responsibility for its own output. And so it's more about a researcher acknowledging how they have used AI. A little further down on this page, we've got 4 tools that we're specifically suggesting. I'm going to use the word suggesting rather than recommending here. These are tools that have gone through our information security processes for a start. So we have a slightly higher level of confidence in suggesting them for use. They approach the question of literature searching from slightly different directions. So they are, I would say, starting to homogenize. All of these tools did something very different at the beginning, and now they're all trying to compete in the same space to be an all-singing, all-dancing research support tool. But they do have things that differentiate them, which I've kind of covered in the text here. This is worth noting, the rapid change. I had a video that I was really proud of, that some of you at Brookes might have been aware of, that took one research question and processed it through multiple tools, starting with a traditional database, Web of Science, and then using each of these tools to see how it approached the research question in different ways. I had to take that down because of the pace of change. It was impossible to keep up to date with the very frequent changes in interfaces, and in some cases having to replace one tool with another because we felt that the tool that we had previously on this list, one of them was SciSpace, had started to do way too much. It was offering to write full literature reviews for students. And so we had to do a real quick about turn at the beginning of last semester, and opted for another tool, Elicit, instead. So the 4 tools that we've got are Research Rabbit, Kenius, Elicit, and Notebook LM. There are many, many more, but these are the ones that I think make a really good starting point for somebody wanting to start looking at AI tools for research. Now, within the time frame, we might not have time to do a full demo, but I think it would be useful while I'm continuing to talk if a few of you could put in a research question that's relevant for you into the chat, and I might have time to try one or two of those in one of these tools. So we will come back to that. Meanwhile, I'll just talk about journal policies. For those people who are wanting to publish, it is really important to be aware of journal and book publisher policies on AI. So I would check these right at the beginning before you begin the creation of a manuscript. If you've got a few publishers or journals that you're considering targeting, to make sure that you don't use AI in a way that would rule you out. So as I was mentioning earlier about citation, no major publishers currently allow AI to be credited as an author. There is a statement that the Committee on Publication Ethics have put out about AI and authorship, which is essentially what we're subscribing to. They can't meet the requirements for authorship. They're not legal entities. They can't manage conflicts of interest. They can't manage license agreements. So they can't be credited as co-authors, for example. But what publishers do and don't allow varies quite widely across publishers. So you can see the column here that says that in no cases is it permitted for AI to be accredited as an author. But what about using it for other things? So language editing with no disclosure is allowed by quite a lot of the publishers. Disclosure is recommended in some cases. Slightly more involved sort of then the next step on, I guess, is content generation, which does tend to require disclosure of one type or another, and in some cases is not allowed at all or not allowed without permission. On the other side of the coin, we've got use of AI by peer reviewers, and a lot of publishers are strongly discouraging this for various reasons. It can make mistakes, it can violate confidentiality. Publishers are not at all keen on peer reviewers putting manuscripts into AI tools, and I think it does have the capability there to rather undermine the peer review by experts process that we rely on to keep the scholarly infrastructure sound. So there are a few sort of notes here. This, I think, was taken from this guide on publisher policies at the International Open University. But these, again, are subject to rapid change. So rather than relying on this grid, I would say always go and check the publisher policies for the specific journals that you're interested in. Okay, so I'm going to see if we've got any research questions that I might be able to try out. Okay, to what extent should Gen AI be used to give students feedback or grading on their assessments? So let's give it a go. I've got Kenius open here. I've got Elicit in another window here. So we can try putting it through both of these tools and see what kinds of responses we get. So I'm just going to paste that straight in as it is into Kenius and see what we come up with. Now, Kenius really prides itself on not being an answer machine, as they put it, so not giving everybody a fully developed answer, but giving you references and prompts for further thinking. I did have a chat with the Kenius rep the other day about it being a bit slow, and indeed it does seem to be being a bit slow today. We'll give it a minute. I'm going to stick the same question into elicit while we're waiting for Kenius. There we go. Okay. So it started looking into the research on this question. It gives a few kind of key highlights here in text overview. Then what it does is gives you options to explore particular aspects or to narrow it down. So only to peer-reviewed research, for example, or to get further explanations of key concepts. That will then generate a different set of references each time. So this is the initial set of references that it's recommending. And then if I clicked on one of these, it would then generate a new set of references on the right-hand side. There are filters that you can use here. So the explanation of how they rate journals, it's based on a Norwegian system. Level 0 doesn't necessarily mean bad. Some open access sources like institutional repositories might well fall into that category. But then we've got 2 different levels of peer-reviewed research here. So going back to the filters, if I were to select peer-reviewed research, it would select options 1 and 2 there. So I can click that, click view results, and it'll narrow it down a little bit for me to the peer-reviewed sources. Now, by doing that, it started another search over here, and it's worth being aware that there's currently a limit with the with the free version of 5 questions per chat. So it's a little bit frustrating because you can end up at a dead end where you go, I'll explore this and I'll explore this and I'll explore this, and then it says you've hit your limit. You can always start a new chat and start again. But even by clicking on one of these, it starts a new question that counts as a response towards your total. So I do find that a little bit frustrating. But there are kind of ways around it. It'll give you options to then go out and access, check whether your institution's got the full text, check whether there's an open access PDF. You can see these options here. This is the peer-reviewed and the high-standing peer-reviewed flags here. And there are more filters as well that you would expect, like things like publication date, types, authors, topics, etc. So that's Kenius. It's changed a lot recently from what it used to be, which was primarily a document upload tool. You can still do that. There's an upload PDF option here where it will then analyze the content of the document that you've uploaded and suggest references. So hopping across to elicit, just doing the same thing. Now, what I've done here, I'm not sure if you can see the pop-up, but it is suggesting that with the free version, it will screen the top 50 sources. And that is the default to generate a research report. There's also an unlimited find papers option. So generating a research report will generate a text summary. It can be really useful for comparing things across multiple sources, the research report, because it can do things like generate a table where it will compare methodologies and sample sizes and all of that kind of thing. The systematic review is part of the pro version. Again, that's a paid for option. But the find papers bit is just an unlimited natural language literature search tool. So if we do that, it will do something quite similar to Kenius in some ways. It will give you it's not limited here to 10. You can scroll down and you can load more.
Isabel, can I
And you
just
can
ask you a
go on doing
question?
that. Yeah, of course.
So, I mean, how does this compare with, or like, do you know what's the difference in how this is searching for stuff compared to, say, Google Scholar or database? Like, or is this the black
Yeah.
box problem that we don't actually know what or
It's a
how it's
little bit
doing
of a
it?
black box problem. Yeah. So they do it in different ways, but it's essentially the way that the Kenius rep explained it to me is using the same kind of uh, functionality as a large language model in that it's kind of it's interpreting the context, the combination of words that you've put together in a full natural language query rather than the more sort of structured thing of a keyword search. But I don't really understand, and I don't think any of these companies will really explain how it differs from, natural language searching in a non-AI supported tool. That is a little bit of a black box.
But
A lot of
presumably,
what's
would
kind
you
of,
say this is better? Sorry to interrupt you.
oh no, go ahead. Is it better?
Like, it looks to me to be more effective than, say, if I've done a Google Scholar search on this topic. It's coming up with a lot more actual relevant stuff in journals that I haven't necessarily come across before, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is better. I think honestly, Google Scholar, they haven't done an update for an awful long time, and I suspect it might be phased out at some point in favor of an AI supported tool. It's my hunch. But Google Scholar is essentially doing a sort of keyword combination behind the scenes. And then ranking the results, but it's got some really frustrating limitations, like not being able to order by citation count and things like that. But I think more of the Gen AI bit that's built in here is the ability to do things like summaries, and that's the major use that it's making of large language models, is being able to combine sources to come up with a summary and to allow you also to interrogate sources. It's got a paper chat function where you can click on a particular paper, and so this will find you the paper. Where's the paper chat function gone? This is where I get lost. Chat with papers. So yeah, this is interrogating a summary of the top few papers, I think. So you can start asking it questions about the results. So you might be able to sort of use that to do things like compare methodologies, etc. And again, it's got filters. It's got always these links, so you can always trace things back to the original source. And that's a message that I'm always harping on about with students, is do not trust these summaries 100%. Please go back to the original source, actually read it, actually check it. Whether or not that message is getting through is another question. But yeah. I'm realizing I am at time now, so I'm going to stop my share. As I say, I could talk about this for ages, but people might have questions. We're already over time, so.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Isabel. I've learnt loads. Yeah, maybe no more Google Scholar for me. Yeah, would anyone like to ask anything or share their own experiences of using these different tools or other tools, or what, anything you think, is it going to change what you do now? Oh, Charlie, that's your hand up.
Thank you, Isabel. I mean, what jumps out at me is, of course, there are loads of these tools, and I can see that if I believe ChatGPT, it's telling me that Elicit uses Claude's AI to help generate part of its answer. And that's part of my question, which is what I'm basically doing now is using my GPT Plus subscription to run a deep research query. There are now so many platforms that are basically just using other LLMs in the back end, and all they are doing is maybe curating it in a way. I think you're using the free outputs, and that obviously changes the quality of the output. What I'm sort of arguing in my own head here is, why do I keep paying £20 a month to ChatGPT? Well, the answer is it gives me this sort of capacity and lots more. And I kind of feel like a lot of these agents are basically using the same thing. And what I don't want is to have 6 different subscriptions to get good quality output.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. They are all borrowing other technologies. They are borrowing other LLMs to base their own functionality on, and then they're combining it with a pool of scholarly sources. So that might be Google Scholar, or it might be OpenAlex, or it might, but it's not everything. It's never everything. And so it could well be that your paid for version of GPT is doing just the same kind of a job that these tools are doing. I think the reason that we select these tools to recommend to students is because we think that the free versions do enough. They do enough of a good job for most use cases without having to pay. So you can definitely get a lot more out of these tools if you do pay for them. But I can understand why you wouldn't want to have multiple subscriptions.
I'm just thinking, when we see systematic literature reviews reported in journals and they say they search the databases, I've yet to see any really recent ones that are using Gen AI tools, but do you think we would expect, you said at the start that it's the combination of the databases, searching the databases in the traditional way, plus then these Gen AI tools in combination that provides the most effective search?
I think systematic review is a really interesting one because not all of these tools would be suitable for that. I have not tried the illicit upgraded package that would allow me to use their systematic review tool, but there are tools like Rayan and Covidence that are being developed that are specifically for systematic review, and I think we're likely to see more of that. So I think these are more suitable for general literature review. But we've had a lot of enthusiasm, I think, across faculty for Rayan recently. But it's a bit more of a complex beast, that one. But I think it's an interesting question to what extent libraries can support all of these different tools, because we're desperately trying to. We're running to catch up all the time on all of these different tools. But yeah, systematic review, I think, is a huge market that a few players have made inroads into. But not all of these tools would be suitable for that.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone else like to ask Isabel anything in the last couple of minutes? I don't think so. All right, thank you so much. So we've got the recording, which I'll share with the network afterwards. But thank you, Isabel. That was really, really informative, really helpful, really useful. And I hope it's given us all some extra tools we can use and employ to our advantage.
You're everyone for coming. Sorry I ran over.
No, not at all. That's fine. All right, thank you ever so much, everybody. See you next time. Okay, bye.